What's up, everyone? Welcome to MLC Weekly number 2. I am your host, Lazergician, and we are here to go over all of the MLC happenings from the past week. Before we do that, though, a few points of order. First things first, this is brought to you by Callahan and the Mind Sculptors. If you want to support their work, there are a couple ways you can do that. First, head on over to Patreon to support directly. All of that money goes directly into the efforts of the MLC. Next up, follow on Twitter for all of the updates for the MLC. Make sure you stay up to date. You can also do that in the Mind Sculptors Discord server. And lastly, there's a lot of really cool decks we're going to be talking about today. If you're interested in picking up any of the cards to play these decks and you're not feeling like proxying and you want to support the channel a little bit, click the TCG Player affiliate link in the description. That way you can do all of those great things all at the same time. Now, today, to break down all of the MLC action, it is not just my beautiful, luscious locks. I'm here joined by Callahan, what would you decide? Vince McMahon was not who we're going with, but someone important.
I'll take Adam Silver from the NBA. I think that works for me.
There we go.
League commissioner.
League commissioner.
Yeah, league commissioner Callahan. And also Chris, also known as the Commander Mechanic. How you guys doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on board. I am happy to be here, happy to give my 2 cents on the way that the MLC is shaping up.
Callahan, hopefully you're slightly less bored than your shirt that's on.
I love this shirt. It makes me feel amazing. But yes, I'm not bored. We had an incredible MLC week, and I'm really excited to talk about some of these selections.
Yeah, hopefully everyone is feeling their draft choices the same way you're feeling yourself in that shirt. Speaking of which, we decided on 9 people's lineups that we want to dive into a little bit for one reason or another. Either there are a couple picks that kind of were steals that got through way later than we think they should have. A couple drafts that we think have maybe some questionable decisions that we want to explore a little bit, and some that we think knocked it out of the park. So let's start off with Ian. First round at pick 22 went with Yidris Storm. Pick 43 in round 2 went for Mad Farm. Pongo held in mid-range round 3 at pick 86 and rounded it off at 107 in round 4 with Kodama Silas mid-range. Callahan, I believe you had some thoughts.
I think he had the best draft of everybody out there. Yidris Storm is an outdated list, so he will get to build that how he wants. And so he ends up getting a 4-color commander late in a round where not many 4-color commanders were left. And those are great colors. Mad Farm is a steal at 43. I don't know how that dropped out of the first round. Same thing with Paco dropping all the way down to the 3rd round. He got a steal there, and then Kodama Silas mid-range there as that last pick. I mean, that's the 3rd, 4th round makes sense, but as far as those late round decks go, I mean, this is probably one of the better ones that you could be on right now. I know we talked about this a lot last week, but we expect mid-range to run this format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I especially think Paco mid-range is one that's interesting for me personally to look at, because that list can kind of do it all, in that it's one of the only competitive lists that can Voltron out effectively. And I think in a format where you're not always bringing, sometimes you're stuck on a list for a week, and that kind of list can really prey on uncomfortable situations. What do you think, Chris?
So the Mad Farm steal round 2 here is just gorgeous. For a round 2 pick, I am loving that pick. That is exciting and fantastic. And I am really looking forward to seeing what's going on with the rebuild of Yidris Storm.
Me too.
Here. The fact that it gets to be taken from the ground up is just phenomenal. It's a late 4-color pick, like you mentioned, Callahan. A little bit rare in the first round here, but the fact that it gets to be completely redefined and we get to see some new stuff in it as well is exciting to me as a deck builder and brewer. That's for sure.
One big thing to keep in mind.
Quick interjection, actually, Callahan. Can we get a commissioner ruling on rebuilds for lists. So that's actually something we didn't go over in the rules.
So rebuilds on lists, basically if a deck has not been updated within 3 months, it is considered outdated and it hasn't had any, changes, any sort of, what are the things that they do with the primer updates. The deck hasn't been worked on in some amount of time. We want people to be able to be playing the current technology, what people are on right now. So if it's beyond that, we're allowing people to make their own version of the deck. Now, with the asterisk next to that is, for example, if you got like a Hermit Druid deck that was outdated, you can't not play Hermit Druid. You have to be on those same lines. But you get to update them. You get to put your flair on it. You get to, bring it back up here to, May of 2021. And so I'm really giving people, the big thing is as long as the spirit of the deck is intact, that's really what it could.
Don't be a jerk about it. Yeah. I think also one other little asterisk on this is astute listeners will know that Kodama Silas Midrange is in the Brewer's Corner on the decklist database. We are allowing decks from the Brewer's Corner to be drafted.
Yeah, and that's
another thing that tickles me. I love seeing a lot of these Brewers picks come up here. That's for sure.
And some of them, and this is, I think Ian is a really good example of this, is because I don't think Ian's on any decks, and Kodama Silas is, I'm not mad to be on any of these. Like,
You're not even a little mad?
Not even a little mad, Farm. But no, I mean, these are all solid decks that I'd be perfectly happy to play for, 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Awesome. I agree. I think Ian has a very, very solidly rounded out draft here. Next up, we are going to take a look at Ken's draft.
Oh, yeah.
Number 9 in the overall draft, first round pick is at Krark Clones. Tasigur Control coming in at pick 56. Round 3, we got a Brewer's Corner list in Tevish Krom, Sari of Insanity. And rounding it out in pick 4 at 120, another Brewers list is Jund Jeska with Ikra Shadiki. Shadiki. We got there. You know what? We got there.
You took the long way to it, Chris, but you got it.
Sometimes you got to get a little scenic with it. Chris, instead of going all the way around the scenic route, let me get the points here. What are we thinking?
So leave it to our boy Ken here to pick his favorite deck round 1 in this draft. You got to give it to the guy. He's got a brand. He knows what he wants. And this is his deck from the list. Like, this is his submission to the deck building database here. So if there's anybody that's going to pilot this deck better, it's no one but Ken. So you got to give him a big favorite when he's choosing that for his decks for the week. When he's going through the rest of these, Tasigur Control, a little bit outdated here, but still in flavor, still in contention. We want to go a little bit mid-range. We know that that's where things are going to tend throughout the tournament here. And Control is in a fantastic spot to go into the mid-game and combo out like that. So I think he's got a couple of really good, strong picks here. And then the 2 from the Brewer's Corner at the end, he could do a lot worse with as well, especially that late Jund Jeska. I'm not 100% thrilled with that. I think that's his weakest in the list.
Yeah.
But you got to think that if there's anybody that's got a strong round 1 pick, it's got to be Ken here with his pet deck.
Yeah, I really, really have to say something for comfort in this format, right? That you're always going to be at least on maybe 1 or 2 decks that you're not particularly familiar with, that you're going to be pouring over the primer for a couple weeks before you're ready to bust it out. Having something you can just, bust out and be perfectly happy with it round 1 is a big deal. Up there with, who's it, Higher got a Hayes Kenrith deck also. There's really, really a lot to be said for having something and you know what to do with.
Absolutely. This is a deck that Ken can pilot in his sleep at this point. So really excited to see when...
Saying something. It's not an easy deck.
But I mean, the guy built it. And he's been tuning it and tweaking it and has finally gotten it approved, and it is in the CEDH deck database at this point. So you got to think that comfort level, no matter when he's playing it or where he's playing it, it's like having the home field advantage. It's a deck that he knows all of the lines for, and there's not going to be any misplays out of him when he's piloting that one. So it's a great safety pick for him.
The big thing for me is we saw LJ take Najila 1, and then Edric came back around to him. And so I wonder if he could have gotten a better deck first round, and I think he might have been able to get Clark clones on the turnaround. And I think that's my only critique of Ken in this is, you might have been able to upgrade Tasigur control to something a little bit stronger. But I think, yes, you're running the risk, but we saw a lot of stuff come back around. We saw a lot of stuff that we were very surprised dropped. So I think, yes, it's good to have that. And, he's going to do really well on it. But I think he did suffer a little bit in some of his second and third round picks because of, going all in on that. And, that's the trade you make.
Yeah. I mean, he has to snap it up first, because even if he gives it the risk of wheeling and picking it up in round 2, he also gives it the risk of somebody snapping it up. He had 9th pick here, meaning that there was the majority of the rest of the crew making their first round picks and
second round picks.
Yeah, and be it that Quirk clones isn't everybody's cup of tea here. If you give it the risk to pick it up second, then you might not end up with it. And again, I don't fault him for snapping it up away. It is his baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, we got Josh. Round 1, pick 24, going with Dawnwaker Thrasios. Number 2 at pick 41 is Temur Poly Tyrant. In round 3 at 88, Timnacrom Bearweaver, rounding it out at pick 105 in round 4 with Yuriko Midrange. I love this draft. This, if I were in the MLC, 3 out of 4 decks in here are ones I would have considered in Dawnwaker, Polytyrant, and Yuriko. What do we think about this?
I like it a lot. There is a reason Timnacrom Bearweaver dropped as far as it did. The list is very odd, but it's still a Timnacrom deck. You're still playing 4-color Breach at the end of the day, so it's still gonna be good. And he stole it out from under Braden, who was planning on taking that deck. And all of his picks got moans from everybody. They were all decks that other people wanted. So he's got to be doing something right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there are picks in here that a lot of people were hoping they would be able to snap up later in the rounds. So people were hoping that these were going to be their round 3, round 4 picks. And the fact that Josh scooped them up in all 4 rounds, fantastic move. He is taking everybody's safety net out from under him at this point. And again, it's a smart move. And as long as he's familiar with these lists, as long as he can pilot them, it's great. Because the reason why you heard those groans from people when you're doing the draft is because they were like, well, that's my round 4 pick. And it's gone now. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's an interesting strategy of whether you play towards the ceiling of your deck's power or if you play towards the floor of your deck's power. It seems to an extent like Josh took the approach of making sure that they don't get stuck with something bad.
Yeah.
They have very, very solid, workable decks in all 4 slots.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm a big fan of ensuring that your value floor is high enough in some of these, and I'm going to contradict myself later in this. You just keep that in mind. But these are 4 decks where you've got the colors, you've got the tools, and you've got the strategy that you're just going to be good no matter what you're playing against.
Yeah.
Kind of on the other hand, Sage has gone all in on Storm. Don't get me wrong. I love Storm. Storm is like my favorite kind of deck. If my friend Jason from my playgroup is listening, I apologize. You know I have an illness, but doesn't change the fact Storm is sweet.
Oh yeah.
Is drafting 4 Storm decks in this format the play?
So it is certainly a play. Whether it's going to be
It's a play.
Whether it's going to be the play is going to shake out in the games, but you have to give it to Sage. Taking these picks, including 3 Brewers decks in the draft is like, oh, I loved it. I saw this and I was like, beautiful, 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 beautiful. Because, of course, naturally, I am all about the fringe decks. I am all about brewing new ones. And I think that these ones are all fantastic. The fact that Birgi and Orvar are picked up round 3 and 4 back to back, phenomenal.
Love those decks.
These are
so
brand
much.
new decks that a lot of people haven't jammed against, even though, be it the Storm strategy is consistent throughout them, there's going to be a lot of lines that some people don't have a lot of familiarity with. And I have always said, I see Orvar and I like it. So naturally, I saw Orvar snapped up in round 4 and I was like, phenomenal, beautiful. That would have been my late round pick for sure, but I'm very familiar with that deck.
And
Sage also had a really interesting opportunity here in that they had 2 sets of 2 picks. They were at the very end of the draft order for round 1, and because we're doing, I forget what it's called. I think of it as a snake format. Okay, awesome. It is a snake draft. They got picks 32, 33, and then 96, 97. Callahan, do you think that was utilized well here?
Honestly, I really don't. I think it's very on brand for them. I think they took and they said this in the chat, is they know exactly what their brand is and they're not going away from it. I might have encouraged them to take different ones. I think the fact that they took Kaikar when Mad Farm was still on the board was a little sus, not gonna lie. There were decisions that were made there. I understand taking Omnath. That's a deck that they are very familiar on. But Brea Consultation, this was a deck that you talked about, was still on the board. Timna Turbo Nos was still on the board. Kest Storm was still on the board.
I would probably take Poly Tyrant over Kaikar
I agree.
personally.
And so there were some decisions that they made with that deck. I think Birgi is not a good deck in this format. I think Omnath is going to be fine. I think Orvar could potentially steal a win because it's confusing as hell to play against. But Kaikar is going to struggle, especially this Underworld Storm Breach. If it was Divergent, I could see it more. But Birgi and Kaikar, I think, are just really weak in this format. And
Birgi might be a good home game.
It might, but
that deck with a good hand can blister out of the gates, but you got to get. But
look at their conference that they're in. It's a very control heavy conference. You've got Cicada playing Adaptive Sisay, picked up Harvest Animar and Nimrus Tempo. You've got Josh playing all these mid-range grindy decks. You've got Cameron playing his fastest deck is a Nala combo. All of these are grindy. They are in a very grindy conference and division. And so
they may be a little bit of an.
It's going to be it's going to be hard fighting for them. But if anybody could do it, I totally believe in Sage. They're a very capable player.
Exactly.
When you got a brand,
I love these
familiarity
picks
again
because
kicks
it is
in.
on brand.
Yeah.
And much like with Ken's draft and Ken grabbing his deck round 1, Sage grabbing decks that they're familiar with. Even with the snake draft, I agree with you. Some of the picks could have been better, but completely on brand here. They know what they're doing. They're happy with it. They can pilot these decks. It means that they don't have to worry about, did I take an optimal line? Am I missing something? Yeah. That is a confidence level when you're heading in against the heavy hitters that they're going to be up against in the MLC here. That's got to account for something.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Moving on, next up, we are going to take a look at the draft from Phoenix. First up is Kess Midrange, followed up with Thrasios Timna Hermit Druid. Zur Storm in round 3, and rounding out in round 4 is Hapatra. What are we looking at here? Kess Midrange makes a lot of sense as a first round pick. Very solid deck, can kind of do it all. Hermit Druid decks, I think, are really sweet. I don't know about them in this format because they can tend to be kind of glass cannon-y. Not by definition, but just sometimes by play style. And then Zur and Hapatra, what are we thinking here?
I really like this draft. I think Kess Midrange is amazing. Thrasios Timna Hermit Druid is much more of a mid-range deck than the other flavors of Hermit Druid are. It's still doing some the deck lists have made some very interesting choices. If you look at them, they're odd. But that's just Hermit Druid players being Hermit Druid players. And
hey, Nathan.
But there's still, you're in Sans Red, so you're going to have all your grind. You have Tymna, you have Thrasios. I played a lot of Hermit Druid in my life, and this deck can just, if you can't get the Hermit Druid line, you're still basically playing Consult Scepter Thrasios at that point. And that's you're in a great place. Zur going in the third round blows my mind. I have no idea how it fell this far. And this is, we've talked a little bit about a top 10 most disrespected decks in this draft. This is number one, in my opinion. This deck had no business going this late in the draft. Absolutely no business.
Chris, your giggles make me think you agree.
So I am on board with a lot of this. We talked about value floors on decks, and these first three picks, Kess Midrange, Tymna Thrasios Hermit Druid, and Zur Storm, are all decks with high floors to them. Even going with
absolutely.
a Tymna Thrasios Hermit Druid deck, you're still a Tymna Thrasios deck at the end of the day. Right. And there is a lot here to like. I think that Zur Storm being picked up that late, yes, Callahan, I think that is a slap in the face to a good deck.
It's a crime against humanity.
Absolutely. But
is Phoenix really still part of humanity?
Phoenix took advantage of it perfectly here. We've got three really strong decks. It's that fourth pick, Hapatra, that I've got to worry about. That's got to be the oh shit button here. And you got to imagine that that's going to be the deck that's going to be like 3-3 and then Hapatra is played once throughout this, because that I think that is a deck that it's a weird call, and you're going to have to make a meta pick to play it, or you're throwing away the week.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that Hapatra was chosen ahead of a lot of other decks. It was picked at 104 out of 128. Yeah, out of 128 picks. There were things like Lavinia Omen Pool may have. I'm very bad at remembering what is in different conferences, so there's probably less of considerations here. But just looking at like pure deck power, I probably would have taken Dimir Scepter, Jun Jeska, maybe even something like Abzan Razaketh over the Hapatra. So I'm curious where the thought process landed.
My
Hapatra
understanding
some of these other
was
decks.
Phoenix's fourth pick. He was streaming his draft, and his fourth pick was the chat picked it.
It was a spice pick.
So
the chat screwed him over. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. So and this was what he said. I told him he could trade it out if he wanted to, and he said, "No, I'm going to stick with it. That's what the fans wanted." So I was like, all right.
There you go. More power
Respect
to him.
it.
But again, I'm not going to doubt Phoenix here. Three really solid picks. And if you got one squeaky wheel, you still got three good ones.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. Next up, taking a look at Pongo. Round 1 of 14 is Ikra Turbo Naz. Yeah. Kenneth Druid at 51 in round 2. Tatiova Turns in the third round, rounded off in round 4 at 115 with Tymna Tana.
Actually,
Snoop.
to correct you, the 115 was actually Harvest Animar, and he got.
We were gonna get to that. There actually was a trade that came in.
And he got Tymna Tana Snoops off the waiver wire.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So for anyone who does not know, I don't think we've talked about this either. Please, esteemed commissioner. Trade rules.
So everybody has one trade, and that was up till this Wednesday to make the trade. You could either make the trade with the undrafted decks, which was first come, first serve free agents, or you could make a trade with another player, but it had to be approved by me. And so far, only trades that have been made have been into the undrafted decks. And so free agent pickups, but they only get one of them, and they have it had until Wednesday. So
for what it's worth, we are recording on Tuesday, so there are still 24 hours worth of trade window time available. So when this comes out, it is possible there were additional trades that happened after recording.
Great.
So given this list, Turbonaz, Druid, Turns, and Snoop. How we thinking? I think this looks like a pretty solid lineup.
I love this lineup. I really do. I think that round 1 and round 2 picks are phenomenal here. Turbo Nas round 1, Kenrith Druid round 2. I think that those are solid, and they are going to put up some numbers throughout the entire season here. Tatiova Turns is all right, especially if we're considering how mid-range we're going here. I think that the longer a game goes, the more Tatiova can shine here, especially the Turns version of Tatiova. And I have a soft spot for Tim Natana Snoop. Personally, I love the last-minute trade substitution here from Pongo, picking that one up. That's a
As an Animar lover, it broke my heart.
no. See, we talked about how mid-range is going to be really strong throughout the season here, and that is a strong mid-range deck with Tim Natana Snoop. Not only that, this is one that me and the Play to Win boys talked about a while ago, and we started brewing this the moment Snoop was spoiled. So again, this one's I've got a soft spot for, and I think that it's a fantastic 4th-round pickup. I think that if we got a weak one in this draft, it might be Tatiova Turns here, but otherwise I think Pongo has a really solid 4.
Callahan, you and I talked a little bit last week about the power of Nas in the meta at large versus the power of Nas within the draft format. How do you feel about it as a turn 1, as a round
I
1
like
pick?
it mostly because of the fact that those 4-color Nas decks, you want to have at least one, in my opinion. And I because you want a really good home opener deck, and I think the Nas decks that are 4 colors that can grind are the ones to get on that. This is an excellent one. I think Sans White is the way to go if you're going to be on it. You get access to dorks, you get access to great removal, all that stuff. I really like it here. I actually think Tatiova Turns is pretty good as well. It's a deck that can play through stacks very easily, and there is going to be a lot of stacks, I think, based on how some people drafted.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think that this is a really solid 4. Out of everybody, you can see that some people dropped one of their picks, and they're really hoping, like, I'm not going to play that one very often. Pongo has 4 that I would be confident playing multiple times throughout the season, without a doubt.
Yeah, this is a definite no regrets list.
Absolutely,
I agree.
absolutely.
All right, next up, Nick is on Elsha Top at pick number 2 overall in round number 1. On the other hand, second to last in round number 2 was Urza at 63. 66 is Divergent Kaikar in round 3. And round 4, second to last pick at 127 in the overall draft, Magda Clockside Outlaw. There are some picks in this lineup.
Oh, yeah.
The disrespect to Urza in that first 2 rounds, I had that as my 9th best deck in this format, and to see it go this far down, it really blew my mind. It really showed how certain people were valuing certain strategies before it. Elsha Top, I understand why it was drafted at 2. It's probably not coming back around to you on that back end of second. Nick, that's his best deck, is Elsha Top, or any sort of those Jeskai decks. It's not coming back around to you. Divergent Kaikar, like I said, I like it more than Underworld Breach Kaikar, but I still don't love it. But like I said, he's very comfortable on Jeskai strategies. He's very comfortable on this sort of thing, so it works for him. Magda's the one I'm interested in about. I don't like most of the monocolored decks in this format, and this is one of the ones that I don't like a lot, actually.
Chris, do you agree with that? What do you think about that one?
So I agree with...
In this format specifically.
Sorry, I agree with a few points Callahan brought up here. The fact that Nick snatched up Elsha Top, second pick overall, I think that's a good play. El Shatop is a consistent deck, and again, if people are anticipating that the season overall is very mid-range heavy, then it's a good one with good lines, especially if you're comfortable with it. My reason why I want to talk about Nick's pick is Urza being picked up that late in the second round. I was astonished by that. Granted, Callahan, you said you're astonished by Urza being picked up that late in the second round. And then on the other hand, you said, I'm not impressed by a lot of the monocolored decks here. I think that Urza is top of the pile when it comes to those monocolored decks. So when everybody is snatching up 4-color and 3-color, to see a monocolored deck get picked up second round like that is a bit of a shocker. But I would have expected Urza to go round 1.
Me too.
Here, at least if somebody's comfortable with it and knows the lines for it. Now, I also have a soft spot for Divergent Kaikar. One of my all-time favorite CEDH lists, without a doubt. It is a banger of a list, and I love it. And knowing Nick and his familiarity with Jeskai, I think that this is a good pick. Being able to grab something that you're that familiar with third round, it's like he went with Ken's strategy. Pick what you're comfortable with up front, and then hope something that you're comfortable with wheels. And that seems like it's a really good pick here. The Magda list, I'm not really familiar with it, but I know the Magda list can come out of the gate swinging because they are very low to the ground here too. But I'm not crazy about it either.
They kind of run out of steam.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, that'll wrap up analysis there. Next up, we're going to take a look at Coin Man. I think the only draft that has 4 decks, none of which have red. Food Chain Ukima in round number 1. Number 2, Gitrog Dredge, which we talked a little bit about last week. I'm not crazy about that deck in this format. Number 3, Nath Stacks, a deck I like a lot, especially in this format. I think that one is actually going to be surprisingly well positioned. Number 4, Lavinia Omenpool. So a lot of not red going on in this draft. Thoughts?
Right. I think the big reason I want to talk about this is that Coinman picks up essentially 2 stacks decks here with Nath Stacks and Lavinia Omenpool. That's going to make their choices for their division really, really easy here. Because having 2 stacks decks to alternate between, and then 2 combo-oriented heavy hitters here between Food Chain and Gitrog Dredge, I think that this is a solid pool, and you can be versatile with it. You can either choose for your meta, knowing who you're up against and their picks, or you can just windmill slam one of these stacks decks and hope that you're locking your opponents out with them. I agree that the Gitrog list probably isn't a fantastic pick. I would have expected it to go a little bit later, but you gotta love 2 Golgari picks back to back here, right? This really seems like another player who is comfortable with their wheelhouse and wanted to pick up a couple of decks that they know like the back of their hand. The fact that they can get them rounds 2 and 3 as opposed to snapping them up in round 1, I think that it shows some real foresight.
Callahan, response.
I agree with you for the most part. I think Lavinia is not terribly well positioned in this format, mostly because it's a deck that really wants to be going first as much as possible. And I don't know that I would be inclined to play it for any of my home games, if I'm being honest. If I only have 2 home games and I'm hoping that my control deck wins it for me, I don't like that position. If it's a die roll, sure, whatever. I think that's fine in like a regular tournament setting. But in this format, it's weird. As the deck person for it, I want to really like it and talk it up, but in this format, it feels odd. I think Nath, like you said, Chris, I think it's going to be surprisingly good. It's got some new toys from Strixhaven. And I think cards like Plum the Forbidden are going to blow people away, and I'm really excited.
Does the list now run the Golgari Magecraft combo?
I don't know. I imagine it's on something along this lines.
Is the up to date?
Yeah,
or is this a rebrew list?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Chain of Smog combo.
But
do we know if the Nath deck is considered out of date or not?
No.
It's not. Okay, good.
But Coinman's played that for years, so he's very comfortable with it. He knows all the lines. So I think if anybody's going to make that deck look good, it's going to be him.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Like you mentioned, the new toys that have come out of Strixhaven here are fantastic. We're seeing things like Rushed Rebirth and even Culling Ritual, which everybody is talking about right now. Absolutely. I am hoping for big things to come out of this, and I'm hoping that some of these new Strixhaven cards are going to shine, especially in a list like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential for, let's call it highlight reel plays. I think we can see some fun stuff out of there. Well, any last thoughts about any of the lists we've gone over today before we toss it over to our next subject?
I think everybody did a great job with draft picks here. I think that there are a lot of players who snapped up what we expected them to snap up, which was fantastic to see. And I think that we've got a lot of players that are working with their familiar decks or their pet decks. And I am most interested to see how that turns out.
Yeah, me too. And I think that overall the draft, I think most people had very good drafts. And I think exactly what I said last week, where what people are going to find is that they're going to get 2 to 3 excellent decks, and then your fourth deck is the one that you're going to feel weird about. And I think that was just very obviously true through this draft. Is we really are seeing that the DDB is a lot deeper than people really think it is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's definitely true.
To the analogy that I used earlier, it's you got a shopping cart and 3 good wheels and 1 squeaky one. Everybody's just working on a different level of squeaky on that last wheel here.
I love that. All right. On that note, I don't want to sully the reputation of our squeaky cart by talking about this any longer. Let's take a look at the trades that have gone on over the course of the last few days. We have had 5 trades over the last give or take as many days. We're going to go one by one. First up, Fukins has gotten rid of Freed from the Real Zaxara and instead is on SPT Layered Combo. Do we think this is a trade up?
So much. I don't understand. The SPT Layered Combo not going undrafted honestly hurts my head a little bit. It's such a good deck.
Yeah.
Chris, for anyone who's not familiar, can you give me a quick 2-second synopsis of SPT Layered Combo, please?
No.
I can't. I used to play this deck a lot. It's Sidisi Brood Tyrant. It's Sultai, Food Chain Hermit Druid. Back in the day, it used to play Flash Hulk because why not? And it's just it has a lot of similarities to Food Chain Ukima, and depending on who you ask, this one's better. If you ask me, I think it's better than Food Chain Ukima personally. This is a really good deck, and the fact that it went undrafted is unbelievable to me. It's such a good deck, and I think switching it out for Zaxara is like light years better.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree that switching out the Zaxara list is the right call here. I think that in terms of the value floors that we were talking about, Brood Tyrant has many more lines than Zaxara does.
Yep.
Yes.
And it just means that it can be more versatile and can pivot. That's the whole thing. Zaxara is very, very straightforward and very reliant on your commander in a lot of instances too.
And doesn't really have... correct me if I'm wrong, Zaxara is not an outlet, right?
No.
It is only there for... Yeah, exactly. So Sidisi can act as an outlet if you set it up correctly. Zaxara cannot. That on its own, to me, makes it a cutoff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Next up, the previous mentioned Shot to My Heart and Pongo's to blame. He gave Animar a bad name, instead taking Timna Tana Snoop. Someone please explain this travesty to me, even though it's probably the right call in this format.
Yeah, I like I said, I think that this is the right call. The Timna Tana list is a better mid-range list. It's more versatile. And again, if you're expecting the games to go a little bit longer and you want to be able to have that inevitability, Snoop is a great call here. It's a little lower on the interaction level, without a doubt. But if you're looking for value on top of value, this is the better list out of the two. I apologize in advance.
Yeah, so the only thing I have in Animar's corner is that Animar is one of the other decks alongside Pongo and Halden where commander damage is a non-ignorable potential win condition.
Right.
Beyond that, Timnatana just offers a lot that Harvest Animar doesn't. Animar can do some really cool things getting off to the races, but it demands a certain degree of familiarity because some of the combo lines are fairly non-trivial. Not, Gitrog Omega Brain levels, but they're they're not the easiest thing in the world. Whereas Timnatana Snoop, if you know how to count to 5, you kind of got the idea.
Yeah.
Right. Well, not only that, Harvest Animar has to play a few lower value floor cards in order to go off. That's true. The thing. Timnatana Snoop, if you're going with or without the lines, your base value is still very, very high in the deck. Your combo pieces do other things. If you aren't fetching up Snoop or Recruiter or whatever it might be, you can Matron for a Dockside and still go off with it. All of your pieces have other routes, where with Harvest Animar, if you don't have the combo going, if you don't have Animar going, you're kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
Yep. That I think that's bang on the money. Also, Harvest Animar is incredibly weak to Opposition Agent, any sort of tutor hate.
Absolutely.
Anything that's that easily shut down in such a linear fashion, I think in this format is going to struggle.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the good news is Animar is redeemed, coming in place of Marath stacks for Cicada. Callahan, what do you think? I think Marath stacks definitely has a place in this, unique meta. I definitely think Harvest Animar does too, if you specifically need a home game deck. This one to me feels a little bit like a side grade, but I haven't seen the rest of their draft to see where these decks slot in.
So they drafted Marath stacks 3rd. And they also drafted Adaptive Sisay, so original Captain Sisay. Corvold Turbonaz, which is a great first round pick. It's a very good deck. And Nimrus Tempo. I like this trade out. And the reason I like that is because you're playing Nimrus Tempo, you're playing Adaptive Sisay, and you're going to want another aggressive deck that doesn't have to go first, that can fill in some of the empty spots that Corvold, because you can only play Corvold 3 times. So, you got to have something else to kind of pad that out a little bit. And I think I like this more than Marath. I think if Marath was Sisay, I'd like it. I think I would have liked this more if it was switching Sisay out for Animar. I don't love Sisay. I think that Sisay is good.
Oh, gee,
yeah. Captain Sisay really has struggled since the banning of Paradox Engine. And I don't think that it's considerably better. That I think that I would have jumped off of an established main board or main list Marath stacks to go with a Brewer's Corner Sisay list.
Yeah. You got to think that Opposition Agent plays a factor into that Adaptive Sisay list too.
Yeah.
But I think that with the 4 drafted here, honestly, Harvest Animar is a side grade for picks 2, 3, or 4 in this pod.
That's about how I feel.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think that this is a fine swap out, but I definitely think that it's one of those meta calls. Looking at what everybody else drafted in the division here, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But I like Harvest Animar a little bit better than Marath stacks, personally.
All right, on. Next up, trade 4 out of 5. Scoots, the newest inaugurated Sculpty Boy, has dropped Markov Razaketh in favor of Dimir Scepter. Now, these are two decks that have very different game plans. So I'm curious if either of you have some insight as to why the shift.
The shift was, and I quote, "It is a sin against like God that Kells did not go drafted," and I
love Scoots. Scoots is the best.
I have to be honest. I agree with him. Kells Scepter is so good. And you can't even choose between a Circo list because all the Circo lists were outdated. So your only option is this Kells list. And so the Kells list, to give you some background, has won quite a few games in Nexus Super Leagues for Into the North teams. So I think dropping Markov Razaketh, I think it's a fine deck. Don't get me wrong. I like Dimir Scepter more.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Chris,
I think that they're both fine decks, but Dimir Scepter, more consistent, more straightforward lines. I think that it's a better list and a more consistent list overall. And I gotta agree with Scoots. Very medium pool to begin with, but the trade here at the last minute gives a little bit of hope for that late round pick.
Let me clarify this a little bit. You are trading off a Mardu deck to get Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation. That in and of itself makes it worthwhile. And I just...
I don't know. Have you ever played Red, White, Black in a competitive format?
This isn't Mad Farm. This isn't Mad Farm. It's
right.
If he was moving off of Mad Farm to play Dimir Scepter, we'd probably have to have a conversation about how long he's going to stay in the Sculpty Boys. But
yeah, I definitely think that this is a good home game pick. If you're going first, if you've got the home field advantage on this is a great swap out because this is the deck that I would want to run if I'm going first.
Right on. I like it. I think that all tracks perfectly well. Last trade, number 5. Pontus has gone for Vadrok Storm, getting rid of Tygam Turns. I think this makes a good amount of sense. I'm not huge on the Tygam list. I think it is fine. Like it's a totally valid list. Works perfectly well. I like the addition of red in Vadrok Storm. Also, I'm just kind of prone to Storm anyway. So for me, I think this makes a good amount of sense. Granted, I haven't seen the rest of their draft in a little bit. I forget exactly what was on there. So it may just slot in better as well. Thoughts, gentlemen?
I think I like moving off of Tygam Turns too. The one thing that's interesting is Pontus did kind of overwhelmingly pick Breach-ish. Like he only has one mid-range deck. He got Doom Breach, Armix Crom, Vadrok Storm, and Thrasios Tevish mid-range. So he's very high on like the Tevish archetype. And but moving off of Tygam, I think is pretty smart, especially when you're in a conference where you're gonna have to come up against Charles, who drafted all rule of law decks, and you're gonna come face rule of law some number of times, and Tygam Turns just folds to rule of law decks. So I think I like this.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm crazy about it for that reason. You've got somebody in the conference that's going to be able to shut down a Storm deck, and we can see that Pontus went with 3 fringe decks essentially for their picks here, and that's a tough one. The Storm list getting shut down, like 30% of the time, just with one person in your conference here is a tough call. I don't know if I'm crazy about it. I think I like it better than Tygam Turns, but I don't think that a Storm list would have been the right call here.
Yeah.
So we're thinking an upgrade, but perhaps a shaky one.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. We can work with that. Speaking of how things will fare inside a pod, inside a matchup, we are going to now take a look at what is going to be our featured match for week 1 of the MLC and take a look at who we think is going to come out with that W.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at what we got going on for decks. First up, we got Timmy T1000 on Opus Thief, Kid Inceptor, Niv Mizzet Control, and Marwyn Elfball, which I think they're trying to trade off of. We'll see how that goes. Sick Robot on Thrasios, Vile Smasher Turbonaws, 5-color Storm, Valvraz, Hulk, and Cole the Forge Master, spicy as heck. Shark is on Curious Control, Thrasios, Vile Smasher Hermit Druid, Teamer Malcolm, and High Tide Jace. And lastly, Squirrel Mob is on Thrasios, Tymna Midrange, which went at 11. That's a top 5 to me. Jessica Ishai Storm, Bird Violence is the best violence, Yuriko Turbo Naz, and Chulane Midrange. I don't want to dive too deep into the drafting choices here, but with these laid out in front of us, is there a deck for anybody that you think stands out as, yes, I want to play this? And for the record, the home game player is going to be Timmy T1000, which means they are going to be sitting first in turn order. The other 3 between Sick Robot, Shark, and Squirrel Mob, 3 S names, I just realized. That's kind of funny. Will be determined by dice roll. So with that in mind, do we have any initial thoughts? It don't have to be who's going to win, just what strikes you as interesting about these 4 players, their lineups, and how they might approach this coming week?
Yeah. So if I'm James, his Squirrel Mob, I'm playing CST week 1, and there's no doubt about it. There's no other.
That is a gemmable deck.
Especially going into this division. Like, this is their central division, and I feel pretty comfortable that CST can walk into this division, go up against any of these decks, sit at any place at the table, and win. So I think that would be where I would go. Outside of that, I have no idea. I don't even know what Timmy's week 1 deck is. I think it's probably Opus Thief, but I don't know.
That's my guess too.
Yeah. Yeah, you come out of the gate strong. You got home field advantage. Going first with Opus Thief means that you can run the table from game 1 or from round 1. I like a lot of the options in here, and I would expect at least 1, maybe 2 of these players to field something a little bit lower on their pick list for week 1 here, knowing what they're up against. Give something a fringe chance here, knowing that you aren't going first on the list, and hope that you pull something out, especially some of these Storm or mid-range decks.
So that leaves us so far at Timmy T, presumably on Opus Thief, Squirrel, presumably on CST. That leaves Sick Robot and Shark. For Sick Robot, I'm maybe looking at throwing out the Valvraz Hulk.
Same.
Seeing how that goes.
I think it matches up pretty well into that pod.
I don't see anything that shuts it down. There's something that's going to be running a whole lot of hate. I don't see any specifically nasty stacks that you'd have to fight through. I don't see anything that would prey on Varls, however you pronounce it, try to do its thing, right? Shark, that's another one where this gets kind of weird. If you're looking at Opus Thief, then you're thinking, okay, I want something that can fight through a lot of disruption and can really play off the cuff. I don't need to have a long-term plan in mind every single turn, because it's probably going to get thrown out the window at least once. So Hermit Druid looks rough.
Yeah.
If you get your Druid discarded and you're left without having to go on your backup plans, then it's not a good place.
Yeah.
Curious Control, maybe. You're looking at a deck that wants to disrupt your hand. You're looking at Varls trying to just do its own thing, and you want to shut that down. Maybe Curious Control is where you want to be this time.
Yeah, I think Curious Control's the pick. The Hermit Druid feels like your home game deck. It feels like the deck that you're going, okay, this is going to be good. Going to seat 1. Everybody's going to not be able to develop if I can get a Hermit Druid out turn 1, turn 2, and everybody's going to have to hit the brakes, and then I can recover off of that. Curious Control here feels pretty good going wherever, although going seat 4 might be rough. But to be fair, it would also be rough playing as Teamer Malcolm in seat 4 and High Tide Jason seat 4. I think I'd rather be on Curious Control.
Yeah.
High Tide seat 4.
Yeah, that's rough. If I could ensure that I wasn't in seat 4, my pick would be High Tide Jace. But just because you're now on a 1 in 3 chance to be going last here, I think that's rough. This might be one where you throw out maybe an L. Just take one here to keep your stronger picks for your home team games. But
sure,
I honestly, looking at some of the potential matchups here, I'd want to play something a little bit higher on the control possibilities. That's it. Just because you're looking at some pretty explosive turns that you're going to want to be the one to pinpoint shut down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think both Timmy T and Sick Robot have drafted full lineups, honestly, of decks with explosive turns that need to shut down.
Yeah.
Opus Thief, trying to wheel you with a Narset. Kid Inceptor, don't even need to talk about it. Niv Mizzet Control, you can't let Curiosity land. Marwyn Elf Ball. Alpha decks go big in a turn. That's their thing.
Yeah.
Sick Robot, same kind of thing. They all have linchpin turns in their decks. So if you're looking at a field of decks that have linchpin turns, a control deck starts looking real good.
Exactly. And that's exactly my reasoning here too. The last thing that you want though is to pick a control deck and go last in turn order. That is the only issue that I'd be looking at. Otherwise, if I'm Shark, maybe I roll the dice literally and figuratively here and I play High Tide Jace.
Yeah.
All right. So with all of that in mind, let's get away from picks, get away towards wins and losses.
Okay.
Who we thinking? Who we putting your money on?
I am going to give game 1, round 1. My pick of the game is going to be Timmy T. That home field advantage with at least 3 decks here that I wouldn't mind jamming turn 1. I think that this is very strong. If Timmy doesn't go with Opus Thief, but goes with Kinnan or Marwyn on this, I think that Timmy's got a really strong chance, but is going to have one of those early explosive turns to come out of it with. But you can't discount that turn 1 advantage.
Callahan, agree or disagree?
If I were to pick 2 players to win immediately, I'd either go with either Sick or Timmy. I think Sick is going to... everybody knows Spleen, his teammate, because he's won all these tournaments and stuff like that. I'll tell you right now, Sick is just as good. And all of these lists that he's got are decks that he's totally comfortable on. And that scares me because they're all really good decks. They're at the topper end of each of their rounds as far as quality goes. So like, I think Timmy has the advantage going first and being able to play Opus Thief going turn 1. You're going to have a pretty big advantage. But I would not take your eyes off of Sick Robot no matter what turn he's in.
Well, that brings it to me. I am thoroughly underqualified to make a guess here, but if you had to, gun to my head, I think I go Timmy. I think 3 out of those 4 decks are capable of doing sick things. If you leave them a window, they go bananas. Second to me might be Squirrel. I think CST is it's so versatile. It can go any seat perfectly happily, and it does it all. So I'm leading Timmy T for the first seat advantage. If Squirrel won, I would not be surprised in the least. So that's you know what? Speak with conviction. Timmy T is going to win. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our programming for the day. This has been a lot of fun, you two. What do you think? How we feeling wrapping up preseason on the MLC?
I am excited. I am thrilled to see some of these games go down, and I really want to see what goes down and what kind of amazing plays we're going to see out of all of these incredible players throughout this round and throughout the season. I am going to be tuning in for sure.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we've gotten this to come all together. I'm really excited to see everybody, put their best foot forward. And it's very exciting to see how excited the community is around this and the energy around it. It's really unlike anything I've seen and was unlike anything I expected. So I'm really excited for this to get going.
And if you want to join in on our excitement, you can join the conversation both on Twitter and on Discord. You can find the Mind Sculptors on both of those platforms. We have our own server, have our own, as if I matter to the Mind Sculptors. But you can find them on all of these platforms. Join the discussion, get in on the energy. If you really want to help out with this project, it is a time-consuming and laborious one on behalf of Callahan. So if you wanted to help out the Mind Sculptors, you can do that either with the TCG Player affiliate link in the description. Get those cards to jam those decks we've been talking about today. A lot of fun. Get in on the action. If that's not your jam, you can head on over to Patreon. You can support the Mind Sculptors directly. Every little bit helps a lot more than you would think it would. So definitely give that a consideration if you can. Beyond that, this has been the MLC Week 2 preseason show. This is the Mind Sculptors. We are signing off. Catch us next time.